Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast that comes to you from Haifa in northern Israel. I'm Gaurav Sawant. This port city in Israel is directly in the line of Hezbollah fire. From early morning today, there's been a barrage of over 85 rockets that have been fired at Haifa and several other adjoining towns in northern Israel. Despite the Israeli Air Force carrying out a series of airstrikes and relentless pounding of Hezbollah bases in southern Lebanon and capital Beirut, Hezbollah retains the capacity to strike quite hard. Of course, all the rockets that were fired at Israel, especially in and around Haifa, were intercepted by the Iron Dome system. But there are reports of some loss of property, not lives just as yet in public domain. And I'm standing right outside the largest hospital in this part of Israel. This is the Rambam Hospital. It's a multi-speciality, a super speciality hospital here in Israel, where injured from across northern part of Israel are brought in. But so far there are no reports of injuries in today's rocket attack. But the rocket attack was severe, it was intense, and the Iron Dome system got activated in multiple parts of Haifa. So Haifa is divided into three parts. One is the Haifa Bay area, the second is the middle part of the mountain, and top is Mount Carmel. And we were reporting both from Mount Carmel and from Haifa Bay when I was caught in one of these barrages fired by the Hezbollah and rushed into an underground center. Now, what was this underground bomb shelter like? I get you more in this report.
और एक बार आप फिर देख सकते हैं ये हाइफा के ऊपर रॉकेट अटैक हुआ है हमास हिजबुल्लाह का, और हिजबुल्लाह के इस रॉकेट अटैक के बाद आयरन डोम सिस्टम पूरी तरह से कि इसको मैं आपको और पास से दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ, और हमको ये कहा जा रहा है कि अंदर आ जाओ, बाहर मत रहो। तो अब हम इस
because shrapnel can fall,
okay,
and it can be dangerous. Also, though, the missiles are not right above our head, still the shrapnel can fall and be very dangerous.
okay, okay, get inside. अब हम एक बॉम्ब शेल्टर में जा रहे हैं। अब देखिए, यहाँ मैं किसी को नहीं जानता हूँ इस इलाके में, लेकिन अब यहाँ पर जितने लोग बाहर के थे, और देखिए यहाँ अभी भी खून पड़ा है। यहाँ खून 2 दिन पहले यहाँ लोग घायल हुए थे, उनका खून पड़ा हुआ है। This is life in Israel.
This is the life in Israel life.
Yeah. यहाँ से अब आप खुद अंदाजा लगा सकते हैं कि यहाँ स्थिति क्या है। बेहद तनावपूर्ण स्थिति है इस समय। जहाँ हम खड़े हैं ठीक इसके पीछे हिजबुल्लाह के रॉकेट एक के बाद एक ये रॉकेट आ रहे हैं, और इन रॉकेटों के आने से सड़क पर चलते लोग अब यहाँ बंकर में आ गए हैं। यहाँ एक चीज़ मैं आपको और दिखाना चाहता हूँ, हालांकि ये थोड़ा सा आपको भयभीत करेगा। ये जो खून यहाँ पर पड़ा है, ये कल यहाँ रॉकेट अटैक हुआ था, और कल जो रॉकेट अटैक हुआ था इसमें जो लोग घायल हो गए थे, ये उनका खून यहाँ पर पड़ा है। अभी तक यहाँ को साफ करने का कोई मौका नहीं मिला, और एक और रॉकेट अटैक हो गया है इस क्षेत्र में। और ये देखिए, ये आपको तस्वीरों के जरिए दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि कैसे आयरन डोम सिस्टम उन रॉकेट्स को ध्वस्त कर रहा है। ये जहां हम खड़े हैं, ये बिल्कुल वही का इलाका है, ये ऊपर का, और एक के बाद एक रॉकेट अटैक हुआ, और ये इनके कैमरा में ये तस्वीरें लगातार आ रही हैं। तो यहाँ पर इस समय इतनी तनावपूर्ण है। अगर आप आसपास देखें तो यहाँ पर लोग एक दूसरे को जानते नहीं हैं, लेकिन चाहे वरिष्ठ नागरिक हो, सड़क पर चलते लोग हो, वो सब इकट्ठा हो गए और यहाँ बंकर में आ गए अपनी सुरक्षा के लिए। और जब तक ऑल क्लियर नहीं आ जाता वो यहीं रहेंगे। ये स्थिति है इस समय उत्तरी इजराइल के हाइफा में। एक दूसरे की मदद करते लोग, तनाव में इस तरह बंकर में रहते लोग।
In the afternoon of 8th of October, Naeem Qasim, the deputy leader of Hezbollah, was addressing the people of Lebanon, the people of Hezbollah, of course. And at the same time, the Hezbollah decided to fire barrage of rockets in the northern Israel. Several of these rockets landed in the residential areas. Many of them were neutralized by Iron Dome system. But that's an indication that Hezbollah at no point of time ready to give up, despite facing air strike by Israeli Air Force. One of the key leader, who's also the leader responsible for logistics, for supplies of military installation, military supplies, Hosseini, was neutralized in the Israeli airstrike last night, and even today the drones are continuing to hovering over Beirut, and several strikes being carried out, precision strike targeting the Hezbollah installation. But the message is clear by the Hezbollah leadership that they will fight till there is a solution. What will be the solution, no one knows. But for now, Israel going to escalate it with not only ground invasion, not only airstrike, but also through the Mediterranean coastline.
And joining me on this special broadcast here in Haifa is Forest Rain. Marcia Forest Rain is a writer. She's someone who's chronicling this conflict very closely, also in touch with the victims of conflict, whether it was the attack of the Hamas in southern Israel last year or the current victims of the attack by Hezbollah in northern Israel. And quite a barrage early this morning. I believe 85 rockets fired by Hezbollah. Do we have any assessment of the kind of damage on ground here?
We're hearing only reporting from different sources that they're beginning to assess the damage, and people are reporting from their home how much damage it is, who is hit. The paramedics make the lists of the injuries, so I haven't seen the final summary yet, but we're beginning to know. And there were people that were hit and homes that were damaged, cars that were damaged. We were in a rocket barrage and we had to run to the shelter in a building that just 2 days ago had also been hit outside, and from the blast there was damage in the building and there were people injured. We saw blood on the floor of a woman who was injured 2 days ago, and the people there didn't have time to clean it up because their house was exploded from, not the whole house exploded, but the blast made their house really turned upside down. The couches were upside down, the windows were broken. It was a lot of damage.
But tell me this, Israel has carried out relentless attacks against the Hezbollah, one barrage after the other. There were some reports that seemed to indicate that there were over 100 fighter jet sorties that were fired to neutralize the strongholds of Hezbollah, both in southern Lebanon and in Beirut. How is it that Hezbollah still retains the capability and the capacity to strike?
Hezbollah is prepared for this war for years, decades, and they have arms more than many armies, many countries have. So although they're a terrorist organization, and people think of terrorists as guerrillas and small organizations and people that have some end to their funds, this is not the case for Hezbollah. They have more weapons than many countries in Europe, and they have unending funds from Iran because this is Iran's proxy. They want Hezbollah to do their work for them. And they can say, we're not involved in trying to exterminate the Jews. It's Hezbollah attacking Israel. But that is not the case. So they have a lot of weapons left, and they have strongholds left, and there are many, many terrorists willing to attack Israel, although that we have already done a lot in Lebanon to make it safe so that our people can return to their homes in the north.
And what is your assessment? We are told that certain areas in the northern part of Israel have now been declared military areas. Are these in a way no-go areas for foreigners or no-go areas even for Israeli civilians? And what does this mean?
When the military closes an area, that means nobody except the military can go in, and they do that for the safety of everyone. It can be because it started off because there was under missile fire from Hezbollah, and that is a very close range, so there's no warning, there's no way to go to shelter, and then they do it because they need that area closed, because that's where the army has to prepare themselves to launch their attacks against Hezbollah.
And is there an apprehension that injured could be brought here to this Rambam hospital? This apparently is the biggest hospital in this part of Israel.
When they are injured, they come to this hospital. This is one of the best hospitals it's one of the biggest medical centers in the Middle East, and it's a very good hospital. So if there are injuries in the north, they tend to be brought to Rambam, and the hospital is prepared to take care of injuries. They're prepared to do so even if we are again come under missile attack from Iran. The hospital has a phenomenal underground solution for when the hospital is in danger above ground, because we as civilians are expected to run to shelter. We have air raid sirens, so we have time to go, not a lot of time, but if For instance, in Haifa, there's maybe 45 seconds, a little bit less than a minute to go to shelter. So a grown, healthy person can do that in time. But a patient that is bedridden or attached to oxygen or things cannot be moved in a short period of time. So the whole underground can be converted into a hospital, and now it is set up and prepared to accept patients. Instead of a parking lot, it was quickly flipped into an underground hospital. It's the most amazing thing that you can ever see in the world. Everything is clean. Although it was made as a parking lot, it's clean, spick and span, just like any hospital. It's set up with all the facilities that are needed, and we can take care of our own. Although our enemies try to attack us and they want to kill us, and they even target the hospital because they know it's a sensitive thing. It's a way to cause a lot of damage. So we're not safe, but we're prepared.
For joining me here on this India Today special, ma'am, many thanks.
Thank you.
So the situation on ground remains extremely precarious, and who could have thought that a country like Israel, directly in the line of Hezbollah fire in the north, now has a hospital where the basement, 3 levels below the earth's surface, the parking lot has been converted into an absolutely spick and span air-conditioned operating theatre, and various wards have come up in the parking lot. And you can't make out the difference whether this is a parking lot or actually one of the wards of the hospital. I also now want to quickly cut across to Lebanon, where India Today's Ashutosh Mishra joins me for more on this big story. Ashutosh, so Israeli Air Forces relentlessly pounding Lebanon. What's been the impact on ground? What are you picking up? What are you picking up about Hezbollah's operations against Israel?
Well, talking about impact, Gaurav, these images right behind me explain one of the worst humanitarian crises. Barely few meters right behind me is the Syrian border. So this is the no man's land, the border between Lebanon and Syria. All I see, only chaos, panic, fear. Are fleeing Lebanon. They are en route to Russia. Women, children, everyone, those who were particularly in the suburban south or in the possible affected area, the fear because of escalating conflict, the people crossing the road. And right the national highway, which was connecting the Syria and Lebanon, you see this is totally the impact of airstrike. When Israeli Air Force literally carried out airstrike to neutralize the highway connection, because this was also believed to be the route where as they say, that this was how the arms and ammunition were being supplied from Syria to Lebanon. They literally neutralized this, totally disconnected the national highway with the heavy airstrike, heavy bombarding in this particular area. We are exactly in those spots that are massive, looks like literally 8 to 9 feet dig out totally because of the impact of the explosion of the airstrike. And now you see these people are crossing barefoot, carrying their minimum belongings, crossing from Lebanon to Syria. Here I see the Red Cross Society is helping the people in whatever capacity they could. I see the women, children, the elderlies who are all helping each other because the vehicles are totally now disconnected from one part of road to the another. The Red Cross Society is here also to help out these victims, because the numbers of these people are huge. Look at these numbers. If you see, these vehicles are hundreds in number. One side they're taking local cabs to reach out to the Lebanon border, and towards going other side they require these supplies which are coming from Syria. So the national highway or the expressway connects Lebanon to Syria has been disconnected because of the Israeli airstrike. The India Today is exactly at the spot where the airstrike was carried out. We see these footprints, and now the impact is on the people, impact is on the human lives, and impact on the citizens of Lebanon. But moreover, this has also demoralized the Hezbollah leadership, particularly last night's strike when Hosseini was targeted. This morning, the deputy leader of Hezbollah, Naim Qasim, when he was addressing, it was actually in the response and retaliation of last night's strike where the top leadership of Hezbollah was killed. And while he was addressing the people of Lebanon, exactly the same time was chosen by Hezbollah to fire projectiles toward Haifa and towards Kiryat Shimona. We have access to even Hezbollah leadership also shared those videos that these barrage of the rockets, several fell in the residential area. There have been property damage, but most of these were intercepted by the Iron Dome. But now, when it comes to the humanitarian crisis and impact of this, all I see only the chaos, fear, and of course, is the migration of the Lebanese who are now fleeing towards the Syrian. Remember, there is a huge number of Syrians also in this part who have been living for years. And now because of the ongoing conflict, no one knows what will be next, where Israel will carry out next strike. Well, you see carrying water, fuel, because now there is an essential crisis of the fuel, particularly in this area. And that have been challenging for the Lebanese authority to ensure the people get at least the minimum, bare minimum support. So already most of these carrying minimum belongings, the most essential thing that I see they are carrying in water bottles and other pockets is actually the fuel, because even there will be multiple villages near the Syrian borders where they could possibly take shelter. And now I see the Red Cross, one large bus has been parked by the Red Cross with medicines, with food, with water and essential supply. But as I walk ahead, I see there's a huge number, more than a kilometer long queue of these vehicles where I see the women, children, and everyone look like in just hurry to escape from Lebanon. So this is one of the worst humanitarian crises possibly Lebanon is facing because of the offensive. But subsequently, the Hezbollah is also showing its aggression and has warned there will be possibly more and more escalation in the coming days, because this address was the deputy leader clearly indicates that they're not going to give up soon. Gaurav.
The fact that Israel has relentlessly targeted Hezbollah, taken out its leadership from Hassan Nasrallah to Fuad Shukr to Hussein Sururi to the logistics chief Suhail Husseini today, what does this say about, one, the Hezbollah leadership, two, their ability to be able to continue fighting against Israel, and higher leadership of war? Or are these only tactical level commanders who, despite being injured in those pager attacks, there is a second rung that is still fighting? So how potent or how strong is Hezbollah as a fighting force in what you've been able to gather so far?
Well, despite, the first line of leadership, clearly, dismantled or neutralized within a first week. But then there was emergence of second leadership. Now, even as the second tactical leadership has been neutralized, possibly there is a leadership crisis. And that's exactly why this day was chosen after Husseini was killed in an airstrike. The day exactly was chosen by Qasim to address the people that they are still united, they have still the number, they have still the strength. And remember the Al Ridwan forces video that was very timely put out by Hezbollah, because clearly they know that once you lose the narrative war, clearly you also lose the support from the people. So they are saying despite of all these attacks, they are also targeting the Zionist forces, and while they are targeting, they also have a strength and a support. So everything was done in a manner to give out a message, because messaging at this particular time, Gaurav, is very important for Hezbollah, which is facing multiple challenges. One at the border with Israeli, and also the narrative war within Lebanon, because clearly not everyone, not all these rankings of Hezbollah enjoy the support from across the people of Lebanon, maybe particularly in one pocket or the southern pocket, but not across the Lebanon. So that's exactly makes a major challenging, and that's why the messaging very important. And once the messaging is out, the leadership is also working to define the line of a next line of leadership, because clearly at the moment there is a crisis of the communication system. There is also major crisis of a logistic supply, and one of the logistic supply that I've been explaining exactly at the point where I'm reporting from is how the national highway, which has been cut off totally, affect the total their supply line, which could be possibly coming from Syria and other parts of this region, Gaurav.
And that's Israel's part of Israel's multi-pronged offensive. Ashutosh, for joining me here on this special broadcast. Many thanks. Israel is following a multi-pronged strategy. One is to take out the entire leadership of the Hezbollah from their top rung to the second line of defense, to the tactical leadership, to destroy their weapons locations, to destroy their tunnels, to destroy logistics replenishment. And that is why that Lebanon-Syria road was also targeted, and inside Syria, one of the biggest consignments of rockets and missiles that was en route for Lebanon was also destroyed by the Israeli Air Force. Israeli missiles and Air Force struck at a time when that airport was actually defended by the Russians, and this brings into question the role of Russia, of whatever role Russia may have in the coming months, weeks and months ahead. But What's the situation on ground in Lebanon? India Today's Ashraf Vani from Ground Zero with this report.
Just I'm at this top, and you can see within before 20 seconds this aerial strike was carried out by the IDF, and since morning it is the third aerial strike here in the south suburb of Beirut. You can assess how much smoke and fumes of smoke are coming out from that targeted building in the south suburb of Beirut on Tuesday, and there is not any kind of let off from the IDF in carrying out the strikes on the Hezbollah stronghold in the Beirut as well as in the South Lebanon. Now, not only the target is the Hezbollah fighters, but yesterday 10 firefighters were also killed in such one aerial strike by Israel here in the south suburb of Beirut. And that is making the situation very panic all along the Lebanon, particularly here in the capital Beirut. Ashrafani, for India Today.
And just a short while back, we were reporting that parts of northern Israel have now been cut off for civilian movement, not just for foreigners, but even Israeli civilians cannot move into that area. It's been designated a military zone. Information we are getting in is that Israeli forces are gradually moving into southern Lebanon. That's a big story. And in an operation, it's a localized operation in one of the border villages, very, very close to the Lebanon-Israel border. The Israeli forces have now taken control of one of those villages where the Hezbollah was directly targeting northern Israel. That village, the Hezbollah compound, is now in control of the Golani Brigade of the Israeli army. So that's a big story, and we'll get you much more on that as the day develops. This is information that's just coming in from the Israeli Defense Forces. But the IDF is following a strategy. The Mossad, the Shin Bet, the IDF, internally and externally, they're targeting multiple adversaries simultaneously. And when we talk about targeting multiple adversaries, as Israel puts it, it means the entire leadership of Hezbollah. How has that impacted the Hezbollah? We are getting the first reaction from one of the strategists of Hezbollah, who spoke exclusively to India Today's Ashraf Vani, talking about, like in any armed forces, there are multiple redundancies. If the commanding officer is inoperational, then the second in command takes over. If he's incapacitated, then a company commander takes over, or a commanding officer is brought in from an adjoining battalion. And that is how Hezbollah is making up for its losses. Listen in.
The resistance has rebuilt itself with respect to its command. So Hezbollah has rebuilt itself with plans and with alternative command. There is always in military circumstances a commander and then a commander for emergencies. This emergency commander also has an alternative emergency commander, and this exists in self-respecting armies, including what strategic plans they have in Hezbollah. So Hezbollah has these internal structures, and Hezbollah has the capability to alternate between one commander and another in less than 1 hour. Because the responsibility in place for the current commander transfers to the next, and they have the same capabilities. However, the commander in place has the main authority, so there is a whole level of command, which is the first won't be affected. And I tell you, it won't be affected. With due respect to these commanders that has been assassinated by an Israeli aggression and their reverence, they are, because let's say, how old were they? And I think it was time for their retirement anyways, with chapeau bas for their work and their sacrifices that they did to the resistance in the way that to protect Lebanon. And the people of Lebanon. And there is no way they would have retired without establishing their successors. The new commanders in place are younger and they have more effectiveness in the new technology. They have a better way and plans and youth and fresh plans for the war to continue this resistance in a much bigger effect against the Israeli entity aggression against Lebanon.
And let me now quickly switch focus from the northern part of Israel to the southern part of Israel and even beyond to the Gaza Strip. Latest information that's coming in, the Israeli Defense Forces have just confirmed they've killed 3 Hamas terrorists who were involved in the October 7, 2023 attack on Israel. These terrorists were directly involved in that attack. They were identified as soon as there was precise intelligence about their movement. Israeli Defense Forces mounted a swift air and ground joint operations. So far, we are told that Israeli Defense Forces and especially the Israeli Air Force has struck over 70 Hamas targets all along the Gaza Strip, including Khan Yunis, targeting military structures and infrastructure, and has killed 3 Hamas terrorists who were involved in the October 7 attack on southern Israel. That's the latest bit of information that is coming in. It's a big success for the Israeli Defense Forces as they've killed 3 Hamas terrorists. That's the information that we are able to give our viewers right now. Now, the one aspect of this is, while Israel targets Hamas and the Hezbollah, both seen as support arms of Iran, the question is, will and when will Israel target Iran, and what areas will it target in Iran? That's a $1 million question that the world is asking right now. But there's another issue that economists are grappling with. How will it impact oil prices across the world? Iran oil, in case Israel decides to target the oil refineries or the oil infrastructure in Iran, will it lead to a massive spiral in global oil prices? We bring you more in this report.
As tensions rise in West Asia, the global economy is feeling the heat. Oil prices have edged upward, signaling potential threats to supply from one of the world's top producing regions. If Israel, supported by the United States, were to target Iran's oil installations, repercussions could be severe. Any such action would likely trigger a sharp rise in oil prices as supply diminishes.
There is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach. There's nowhere we will not go to protect our people and protect our country. With every passing moment, the regime is bringing you, the noble Persian people, closer to the abyss. But you know one simple thing. Iran's tyrants don't care about your future, but you do.
The move taken by our armed forces was the least punishment for the occupying Zionist regime in the face of the crimes, the unbelievable crimes committed by that regime, the bloodthirsty regime, the wolfish regime.
The Karg Island is Iran's main oil loading terminal. It handles over 90% of the country's crude oil exports. Oil tankers could be seen vacating the waters around Karg Island, fearing attacks. Data from the European Space Agency's Sentinel satellites, processed through the Earth Observation Browser, showed at least 9 vessels, likely oil tankers, east and south of the island on September the 28th. A follow-up image taken on October the 3rd captured a stark contrast, with only 1 vessel in the vicinity, apparently on the move. An attack on Karg Island could cripple Iran's exports but spark equally harsh countermeasures by Tehran. Iran could retaliate by striking American or its allies' energy operations in the Gulf. It could blockade the Strait of Hormuz, leading to major supply chain disruptions. Iran could also step up the tensions in the Red Sea with the help of its proxy, the Houthis, by targeting oil tankers and forcing traffic to reroute. US President Joe Biden has expressed hope that oil installations will not be targeted by Israel.
The vast majority of our allies around the world as a way to bring this to an end. Look, the Israelis have every right to respond to the vicious attacks on them, not just from the Iranians, but from everyone from Hezbollah to Houthis.
A similar face-off was last seen in April when Iran launched missiles and drones at Israel, the latter responding by attacking an Iranian airbase. The two countries stopped at that, and no further escalation took place then. The latest crisis, however, may not end that easily. With Gaurav Sawant in Israel and Rajesh Pawar in Iran, Bureau Report, India Today.
But as far as Israel is concerned, it is very clear it will target Iran at a place and time of its choosing, and that will not be a symbolic attack. It will be for effect and to establish credible deterrence to ensure neither Iran nor its proxies like the Hezbollah, Hamas or the Houthis dare to target Israel. That's what top IDF commanders have insisted. We will continue to track developments on the story very closely, but that is all I have for you on this special broadcast from Haifa in northern Israel. Many thanks for watching. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.